Hi, team. Is Russia a European country? The answer is yes and no. We looked at this question as part of European history in our Anchor Fact series on Europe. Now we're going to look at it as part of Russian history. Until the year 1700, the answer is no. Russia started as Kievan Rus, circa 862 AD. It became an Orthodox Christian country with the baptism of Rus circa 988 AD, while Europe was becoming a Catholic Christian culture. Russia was occupied by the Mongols from 1240 to 1480, and thus was more connected to Asia than to Europe, until the Russians freed Ukraine from Mongol control. All this time, Russia was very distant and disconnected from European culture, which was barely getting itself organized. One step linking the two came in 1553, when two English explorers named Willoughby and Chancellor were trying to find a way to get to China. The Europeans had found two ways up until then. The Portuguese had gone under Africa. The Spanish had gone under the Americas. The English were wondering if you could go over Europe, America, and Asia, performing what's called the search for northern passages. In the end, they couldn't do it because there's simply too much ice. But Willoughby and Chancellor did get over top of Scandinavia to the Russian port of Archangel, or Arkhangelsk. From there, they went to Moscow and met with the Tsar of Russia, Ivan the Terrible. The word Tsar, which means Caesar in Russian, became the title of the leaders of Russia when they started to build a Russian empire. Obviously, the Caesars of Russia were thinking of themselves as emperors, but they still didn't really have access to Europe. Only a small amount of trade flowed via the northern route. Starting in 1700, a Tsar named Peter the Great changed all that. Peter was the leader of Russia during the Great Northern War of 1700 to 21. In this war, Russia defeated Sweden, a European country, and took over a small piece of land on the Baltic Sea in northern Europe. On that land was then built the most European of Russian cities, St. Petersburg. From that point on, Russia traded more and more with Europe and was involved in almost all important European wars. This is when Russia at least started being a European country. In the Wars of the Franks, as we saw in European history, Russia was not involved. In the 100 Years' War, as we saw in European history, Russia was not involved either. In the Reformation and religious wars, again, Russia was not involved. But after the Great Northern War, it always was. In the French Revolution and Wars of Napoleon, Russia was definitely involved. In World War I and World War II, yes again, and in a very big way, Russia was involved. In fact, Russia ruled much of Europe after that and forced many of its people to live under communism. The goal of Peter the Great was to make Russia a part of Europe. He wanted Russia to be a great country, and he knew that Europe was more advanced than Russia. He knew it because he often went to the German quarter in Moscow, which was the home of European merchants. He later personally toured Europe to learn European ways. There are statues of Peter the Great in Amsterdam and London because of this famous embassy of his. He was 6'8" tall, so everywhere he went, he was noticed. And history sure notices him too. Because of the Great Northern War, Russia became one of Europe's most important countries. Even today, there is a war in Ukraine involving Russia and Europe. And Europeans are worried that Russia will attack Europe if they don't stand up to Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin. Almost everything about Russia after the Great Northern War is focused on how to manage Russia's relationship to Europe, especially how to catch up to Europe. As we'll see in the next lesson, that started to become a more and more desperate quest. Russia was invaded over and over and started losing European wars. The Europeanization of Russia, we could say, the process of transforming Russia into a European Russia, was slow and difficult, and it was never completed. To this day, Russia is still different. and cannot figure out how to fit itself into Europe. Next time, we'll see the role Napoleon played in this painful connection of Russia to Europe. See you again soon.